Hey everyone, got a video for you here. What we're going to be doing is, because in the previous video you've seen that we busted a shock on this truck. And I was actually slightly wrong about what had happened with that. So in that video I said that we stripped the threads off of the shock shaft. What actually happened was the exact opposite. We stripped the threads out of the nut. So the threads on the shock shaft are probably good. It just stripped the threads out of the nut. But I've bought a complete shock rebuild kit anyways. We are going to change out the shafts, so I'm going to teach you how to rebuild a shock and refill it with oil. And we're also going to install some hot racing 140 millimeter limiting straps. Now I measured my distance from full travel from this hole here to the hole up on the shock tower, and it's actually less than 140 millimeters, but I could not find a limiting strap that was the perfect length. So I bought them a little long, and there's one or two things that we can do here. I can either tie a knot in them, which with a heavier vehicle I would be worried about it weakening the strap, but I'm not really worried about it with this. The other thing that I can do is I can take it in your shock tower here. I can put the limiting strap in upside down and then loop it down through the chassis. Now that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to just hang it straight from the shock tower, but these are a bit long, and I was rolling the dice on either losing like from there to there because the limiting straps are too short, or getting a pair that's too long and just making it work. I could not find the perfect size for this truck, which I think I wanted like 139 millimeters or something like that, 135. I don't remember the exact measurement I took, but we're just going to make these 140s here work. I need through a couple of parts needed to do this. This is part number TLR 5911. These are 20 millimeter M3 button head screws. There's 10 of them in this package, and to go along with that we bought the TLR, come on focus, there we go, 6313. These are lock nuts, again M3 5 by 5.5 millimeter, and there's a pack of 10 of them. What these are going to do is be our mounting hardware in both the shock tower and the swing arm for our new limiting straps. Alright, so, and the part number for these limiting straps are, oh my, SLS 140T0202. Just trust me, it's easier to just look up limiting straps on AMAN. That's where I got those. And they are the 140 millimeter ones, and where they're going to drape them over the top of the shock tower or tie a knot in them. Go ahead and get to rebuilding a shock. So what we have here is the bad shock and the good shock. So normally what you would do in this situation is, to rebuild a shock, you would take the cap off, and then you'd reach down in here with a 4-way wrench, and on the inside of your bore of your shock you're going to have a little nut on the end of this shaft, and then you'll have this little piston, and somewhere in there, at least on these particular shocks, you have little washers that hold it together. Now when I took this shock apart, it had already failed, it had already pulled out, so I have no idea which side of the piston that washer goes on. We're going to have to look at the shock that survived in order to understand how all that goes together. Alright, so keep in mind that some of these things do go together a certain way. Some are held together with a nut, some are held together with a C-clip on the shaft. It's pretty much always the same thing. You've got a piston, you've got a shock shaft, and you've got a nut or a C-clip or something that holds it all together. Alright, where does the washer go? Looks like the washer goes below the piston on these shocks. So if you look in there, there's that little nut I was telling you guys about. Alright, you take a little 4-way wrench, you put it on that nut and take it apart, and it looks like the washer I was speaking of is actually on the back side of the piston, the opposite side that the nut is on. And that would make sense, so that when it's compressing, the piston actually has something to bear against instead of this tiny little shock shaft. So there's less of a chance of messing up your piston. So washer looks to go on the back side, so we are good for a full rebuild. And I'll just go ahead and keep this rolling. show y'all how to do that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and put the cap back on this one so that it doesn't leak. There we go. Alright, take the cap off of this one here. There we go. And we're actually going to replace the shock shaft as well, because there is a chance, sorry that it's blurry, there is a chance that the threads on this were damaged when the nut tore off of it. Even though it stripped the threads out of the nut, I still want to replace the shock shaft just to be safe. Hands got some shock oil on them. Can't get a hold of the bag. Alright, so we have a full rebuild kit here. I don't know if I told you the part number for this. This part number is, if it'll focus, the front camera on this phone sucks. I'll just read it off to you. These are FRRR, which is front and rear shock shaft set and hardware, Baja Rey. They do make a Super Baja Rey, which is a much larger truck, so be sure that you get the right kit. This is part number LOS 233003. Alright, try and get it to focus for you again here. I mean, it's not going to. I gotta get a better camera, sorry. Alright, again, working with a cell phone here. Okay, so one thing about taking your shock shafts out of your shocks, this isn't as important for me because I'm going to be replacing this anyways, but if for some reason you're changing this end piece here because you break it, don't just grab hold of this shaft with a pair of pliers. You'll score it, you'll mar it up, you'll leave like marks in it. And in the ends of your shocks here, you have little rubber O-rings that create a seal. And if you're not already picking up on this, what I'm trying to say is that shock shaft has to slide smoothly through that seal, and if you mar this up, if you put a bunch of marks in it, you're going to start cutting the edges of that seal, and your shock is going to start leaking. So if you have to take this off, the first thing I would recommend is getting some hot glue and putting it on your pliers. If you don't have hot glue like me, then wrap it with a shirt or a paper towel or something. Don't ever use really, really, really aggressive pliers, because then there's even more of a chance of you breaking something. Right? So just keep that in mind. For me, it doesn't matter. I'm replacing this anyways. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and grab hold of it and spin that bottom little linkage piece, whatever it's called. I forget the name of it. I'm going to go ahead and spin that off real quick. If you can hear some noise in the background, sorry about that. My little brother is in his room playing Xbox and he gets a little loud sometimes. So that's off. Now, let's see which length we have here. Okay, those are going to be way too short, so we're going to go with the opposite length. That, oh, I got one upside down. There we go, that's the one. Alright, and now I'm confused on which is which. Son of a gun. This one looks newer. Yeah, it's this one. Alright, go ahead and throw that one away. We don't want to reuse it. I mean, I'll keep it just in case I get into a pinch somewhere and have to use it. But it's not something that I want to reuse. So we're going to go ahead and rethread on our linkage here. And this is where I will use my shirt. Yeah, that way. There we go. So you're going to go ahead and put the new linkage on, or not linkage, why do I keep calling it that? Yeah, for the life of me, cannot remember what these are called. They've got a name, I just don't remember it off the top of my head right now. Ouch. Funny bone. Right on the chair. I didn't put it on the wrong side, did I? No. I can't tell if it's slipping. Oh yeah, it was just slipping in the shirt. So you do have to put quite a bit of pressure on these sometimes to get it to all screw together. And that's one of the reasons why You always either want to cover this shock shaft with something or use some pliers that got some hot glue in them or something, because you do have to put some pressure on this, and if you mar up this shaft, you're going to cut your seals. So after putting that in, we are going to put our bump stop back on, and then from there we are going to assemble the piston onto the end of this. So we're going to go ahead and open our hardware bag. There we go. Just dump it all off on the table. If something falls, you got, you got hands and eyes, you can look for it. I was being sarcastic, by the way. Be careful, don't lose your hardware. If you're wondering what I'm doing with that, you just kind of, they're so small and light, you can push down on it with your finger and then put it on your shock shaft. So there we go, there's that. And then our piston. I don't believe any of these are ever directional, so I don't think that's much to worry about. But after that, we are going to go ahead and put our, if we don't lose it, go ahead and put our nut on. There we go. I'm just going to use the bottom of that to screw it into place. We don't want to over tighten this. These are nylock nuts. Once you get the end of the shock shaft through the nut, you're actually pretty good. So just tighten it down until the end of the shock shaft comes through your nylock washer and you're good. All right. Actually, I'm an idiot. I can't believe I did that. You gotta thread the shock body through. You gotta thread the shock shaft through the shock body first. Oh my God, that's embarrassing. All right, I'll bring y'all back in a minute. All right, got it back together now. So, honest opinion time here, guys. These shocks, if you remember in the beginning of the video, I was talking about how with a trailing arm style suspension, when you put pressure out here, you've got a lot more pressure up here. These shocks, in my personal opinion, should be a lot beefier than they are for that style of suspension. If you look at the threads, and yes, this is only a 10th scale truck, but here's the tip of needle nose pliers. Look how small the threaded area on the tip of those shocks are. It's about as big around as the tip of needle nose pliers. This truck, in my personal opinion, for the type of suspension setup it has, needs beefier suspension components. I don't know of any parts you can buy that are beefier than these, but yeah, these shocks are, in my opinion, a little bit dinky for this truck. They're a little too small. I mean, not like lengthwise or anything like that. They're fine in terms of suspension travel, but I feel like they should be made out of some slightly stronger components. A more beefier threads, certainly on the nut and the shaft. I mean, if you look at the nut here, this is, if I can get it in, I can get it on and not drop it. That is the nut that holds the shock shaft together, and this is on the tip of my pinky. It's absolutely tiny. So this thing could definitely use some stronger hardware, and maybe we'll do that in a different video. We'll buy some actual good shocks. I don't want to get rid of the blue, but whatever. Alright, we're going to go ahead and pull our bump stop out of the way. Go ahead and put this on. Alright, that's your shock reassembled and ready for oil. What I'm going to have to do with this shock, though, is take oil out of the still functioning one and mix it half and half, because I don't know if 50 weight is too much for these or not. I got a feeling it's not enough just because of the style of this truck. Now, it's a solid axle again with the trailing arm, but yeah, so this is a bit difficult unless you have like a piece of cardboard that you've cut some holes in to set your shocks in. I'll go ahead and show y'all how to do that real quick. So we got our shock in our little makeshift shock stand here. It's not straight, but whatever. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take half of the fluid out of this and put it in this one and then top them off with the 50 weight. I'm starting to get it full. See that one? That is mixed half and half with 2 shock fluids. This one right here is only what's left over. So what we're going to do here is, and I'll show you this here in a second. We're going to take these, we're going to fill them up, and we're going to cycle them a couple of times with the caps off. Now these caps apparently have bleeder screws in them. I have no idea how to use that, but normally what you do is, and I'll show you this here in a second. Normally what you do is you take it, you fill it with the shocks fully extended, and then you compress and you extend them, and you just do that a couple of times. You'll notice a bunch of air bubbles come to the top, and you just keep doing that until there's no more air bubbles. And then you take like your old shock shaft or a toothpick or something, and you just kind of stir it around in there and pop all those bubbles, and then you do it again, and then you go and you pop the bubbles again, and you just keep doing that until there's no more air bubbles. And what that does is it keeps air out of your shock. Air is also a compressible fluid, but it's got different properties than shock oils. So if you have air in this shock and none in this shock, then what's going to happen is you're going to have different dampening rates and all kinds of other, not good crap. So yeah, let's get these fully assembled. We're going to go ahead and fill this one up. Well, we'll wait for that. Now, when you do this, you don't want to do it fast, because again, you'll shoot shock oil everywhere. We're just going to bring it down all the way, and then we're going to pull it up. And yes, we've got bubbles in there. We're going to take this in here, stir it around a little bit, get rid of all those bubbles. And we're going to do it again, full compression all the way up. And we are done. No more bubbles. And then we just screw the shock cap on. Pretty simple. We're going to do that for both shocks. Okay. We are going to go ahead and put our shock fluid in. Just keep an eye on our levels, right? We don't want to overfill it. Sorry. Tell you a funny story about me. When I was young, I had a severe speech impediment until one day I almost bit my tongue off. So this is a cool story. So when I was young, I was always made fun of in school because I could not pronounce the letter R. If y'all ever seen Elmer Fudd from Looney Tunes, Webbit. It was always pronounced with a W, right? I was the same exact thing, and I am not joking. Dead honest. Dead serious. So rabbit was webbit, red was wed. Could not pronounce the letter R as a kid. A severe speech impediment. Followed me everywhere I went. Well, one day I was at a friend's house, and she had this big bean tree, right? I guess it was a bean tree. It had like these long little dills hanging from it that were like bean pods. So we're jumping on this trampoline, we're having a good time, and all of a sudden we both jump up at the same time, and she lands beside me, and it launches me, and I mean, like, it launched me. I can't tell you how high up I was, but it sent me to orbit, and I came back down, and when I did, I hit the trampoline, and my knees collapsed. And when my knees collapsed, I hit my chin right on the top of my kneecap, and bit my tongue. And almost bit it off. I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't have any of that happen. I couldn't talk for a couple of days. Not right anyways. But once everything healed back up, no lie, that speech impediment went away. No longer had problems pronouncing the letter R. So, yeah. If you got a speech impediment, just bite your tongue off. When it heals up, apparently it fixes it. People will tell you that when you compress these shocks, they should come back out under pressure of the oil, and that's actually probably true. If you notice when I get to the top, you can hear it squeak. That's because what's happening there is it's hitting air instead of fluid. So this actually needs to be a little more full. We're going to do this one more time. And you see the fluid coming up to the top there? Yeah, got lots of little bubbles in there. There we go. See how it actually comes back too? Are topped off on the shocks. They are rebuilt and they are ready to be put back on the truck. So bring y'all back here in a minute. Show y'all a little trick with getting these shock eyelets into any type of mounting position that they're supposed to go into. This can be a pain sometimes. Sometimes the what they're going into is just a hair bit smaller than the width of the actual the eyelet here. So what I do is I'll take this and we'll get it lined up to the best of our abilities, and then I'll shove an Allen wrench through the eyelet to hold it in the correct orientation. And then when you pull the Allen wrench out, it should just fall right in. And I've done this many times on many different trucks. It always seems to help, if not be the perfect solution for it. So if you're having trouble with that, just give that a shot. I know it's dark, I'm sorry. There we go. Check that out, popped right in. See? It's not always that easy, but I guarantee you it helps. Get this fully buttoned up, we'll put on the limiting straps. Test our compression and rebound here. I'm just gonna kind of push down and let it come back up. It seems a bit springy like that, but when you actually drop it, oops, hold on. When you actually drop it, you can get everything out from under it. I actually like that. It returns nice and slow. Alright, so we still bottom out from the foot high test, right? But that's the front end that you're hearing on that. The front end, yeah, I mean the front end even slaps like that. So my next thing is going to be to fill the fronts with 50 weight. But for now, I'm happy with the way the rear of it is. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Alright, we're going to put on these limiting straps. So I've already got one looped around the back of the chassis here. You can see it. It's connected to the shock tower. So we're going to fold this actually around this side because the back of this screw up here pokes through the back and I don't want it tearing at this. Alright, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so you see how your screw comes through right back there? If I fold that around in here, that screw as this moves is gonna kind of tear at the back of this. So we're gonna go under there, down through there. And I know, I'm well aware this is not how limiting straps are supposed to be ran. All right, I get that. It annoys me too that I can't find the length that I'm looking for, but I'm making do with what I can. We are about that short. So if I move this up, watch it. That much here is a lot more here, so check it out. That's the difference in travel I'm going to have. I did not want that. I wanted it right about there. But I'm just going to have to deal with what I have because I'm going to have even less if I tie a knot in it. So we're going to go ahead and get both of these bolted up. And I'll show you the difference. I'll take some pictures at full droop, both without and with the limiting straps. Alright, so we got the limiting straps installed and looped over the top of the shock tower here like I was talking about. I don't like the fact that I lost so much travel, but that's what limiting straps are for. They're to limit your travel so you don't overextend your shocks. So I'm just going to live with it. Maybe I'll try buying some slightly shorter ones and hanging them straight down, but even then there's such a gap between 140 and the next size down that I may have even less travel if I buy a smaller size. I don't know. That's why I went with the larger size, so that I had room to kind of do it this away or tie a knot in them or something. And even that didn't work. So yeah, we limited our travel a little bit, but at least we won't be overextending the shocks now.